Is it even possible to make the sterile barrier packaging of an implant more sustainable? To answer this question, I brought in Marcel Kunz. He is the head of packaging at Straumann Group and has over 16 years of experience in the packaging of dental implants. He's very motivated to do something about the sustainability of said packaging. And in this episode, you're going to learn his golden rules to make packaging more sustainable. You're also going to learn on how to balance this with safety, compliance, and the cost of the packaging, and what the future holds for medical packaging and why you should be acting now on those issues. Here's our discussion. Hi, Marcel, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Lucas.
So, Marcel, you are head of packaging at Straumann, and Straumann is manufacturing dental implants. Give us a brief overview over those implants and how they are packaged today.
So we have different kinds of implants. So we have implants made of ceramic and implants made of metal, means titanium. And the difficulty that we have with the metal implants that they are not dry. It's not dry implants, so they are stored in a liquid, in a natrium chloride. Means we cannot just put them into a blister. We need to put them into a liquid tight packaging system, which is tight over the next 5 years, which is also tight under all conditions. Means in the US, in Africa, in Russia, all the temperature and climatic zones. So that's the difficulty that we are having. So we have always the primary packaging, which consists of injection molded part, and then we have the sterile area around the sterile barrier system, which is then a PET blister sealed with Tyvek, and then as protective, we have a box around. So that's in general the system, how it looks like.
So you have two systems or two implant systems. One is ceramic implants, and those don't need to be stored in liquid, and the metal implants need to be stored in liquid, and therefore you have an injection molded primary packaging. What does that consist of?
So the primary packaging is a COC vial, and then we have LDPE lid, and then the implant, we have two ways how we fix the implant. One thought of them is directly fixed in the lid, means the metal part is fixed in the lid, and then we have another one which has also a transfer piece, which is then, let's say, packaged or fixed in an implant carrier made of COC. And then we also have an additional titanium grade 4 implant stopper to ensure that the implant will not fall off of this transfer piece. Because you have to imagine this transfer piece is a kind of an adapter between the insertion tool and the implant. So you have to twist in or turn in the implant, and then you have to remove it. So you have a kind of a force. On the other side, you have a force when an implant falls on the floor. There's a force, and this force is higher than the force that we have specified to remove the transfer piece from the implant. And that's a little bit the reason why we have this stopper, to avoid that it will fall off. Therefore, we have several materials in the primary packaging.
Okay, and you said the stopper, so the transfer piece, that is also made from metal or from plastic?
Metal, yeah. Anodized metal.
Okay, good. So it's quite a complex system because usually in medical packaging, or what we hear very often is it's just the packaging with, let's say, a slight negative undertone there. It's just the packaging. It's not let's say, the device or the implant. But as we see here, it's quite complex, and it has a lot of requirements. For example, when it falls on the floor, the implant shouldn't come off because that would be devastating. And it has to hold the liquid. It has to be a sterile barrier. So it's quite a complex system.
And it has to support the workflow of the dentist. It's not just a packaging that you open it and then it's done. There's a workflow behind, and you have to support and to follow the workflow at the dentist side.
That's a very interesting point. So what would be a general workflow a dentist would use to do such an implantation?
So, it's an implant always needs to be that there must be a hole. You first need to drill the hole. Means you need to have a sterile drill. Means you first have to prepare the hole before you insert the implant. So assuming that the hole is done, then you have the non-sterile nurse taking the following box and then showing the box to the dentist to say, hey, it's the right implant because you have different lengths, different diameter. Imagine, that you would just drill in an implant which is too long, and then you would affect the nerve. I think here we would then create big troubles. Means he needs to confirm. Then she opens the box, and so she's unsterile and opens the blister and lets the sterile vial, let it drop into the sterile area. Means she's non-sterile, he's sterile, and then the dentist will then open the vial and then insert the implant. And that's also the issue that we are having here in the sterile area. It's contaminated. So they have to let's say, they will put it into the biohazard. So there's no way to recycle it because contamination with blood, whatever. So everything ends up in the sterile area cannot be recycled. Everything which is outside, there's a chance to recycle it.
Okay. So the COC, which is probably the highest value material, that is rated as contaminated waste and goes to incineration.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. I mean, as you just mentioned, the sterile barrier and that this is a huge challenge. Would you explain to the uninitiated what ISO 11607 is? So requirements for sterile barrier in medical device packaging. Would you explain what the requirements are?
So the main requirement is that we have to assure a sterile product until the use. So we have a shelf life of 5 years. So when we sterilize the product, we have to assure that it's tight for 5 years. And then when it's opened, still needs to be the same sterile as before. So there are several requirements that we have to test. The main is to confirm the tightness of the sealing. Means we have several testing that we are doing. We have seal strengths, we do visual, we do bubble tests just to confirm that the system is tight. And this is very, let's say, intense testing. And you cannot only test 2 samples, you have to test a huge amount. You have to test it over the whole shelf life. And as I just said, it's 5 years. But when you develop a new implant, you cannot just wait 5 years until you launch it. So that's why we do accelerated aging. Means step, we always do T0, T1, T3, T5. So in the worst case, if you would have, for example, a fail at T5 accelerated, we have passed T3. We could just do a step back and say, okay, we will launch the system or the implant with 3 years shelf life and not with 5 years, just as a fallback option. But in general, it's very cost intense and time intense. But everything has to be confirmed with real-time aging. So we do kind of a simulation, accelerated, but need to be confirmed with real time.
Okay. So base requirement is tightness, and you probably also do sterility validation. So after sterilization, you do the validation of the sterilization method. For those who are not very familiar with accelerated aging, would you quickly explain how that is done and how you do acceleration of the aging?
Years ago, we have established a test center in-house, so we can do all the testing in-house. So it's a chamber, and you put just all the samples into the chamber and you do the aging with a higher temperature. Means you go up to 50, 55 degrees, and then you do just the aging there, and this will just increase the aging. Means that the stress to the packaging. With this, we can just speed up everything and get results earlier. But for this, you need to have, assuming that when we do a shelf life study, we need around 700 samples. But not only packaging, but also implants. An implant is quite expensive, so also on the cost side, it's very costly. But also, if production side has to produce 700 somewhat samples, it's quite intense, on their side, resource-wise. So it's nothing that you can just do. You always distribute the real production. And this is always, you have to take care, that the interruption is as less as possible.
So your biggest challenge is that you have a very large sample size and you basically stress the system if you want to test a packaging with your system. I mean, the principle that this is based on is this called time temperature superposition principle. So meaning that if you increase the temperature of a polymer, everything, all reactions are going to take place at a faster speed, meaning that if you increase the temperature, you basically just increase the aging speed. That is not quite perfect. It's very good below the glass transition temperature. If you go above the glass transition temperature, like other stuff starts to happen. But this is a very, very, let's say, common way of determining the shelf life. And then you said you also need real life data to back this up. So what you would do is like you start the aging just like on a room temperature or room climate level alongside with the accelerated aging, and then you start to go into the market? Or do you need like the real-time data? You don't need the real-time data to launch on the market.
We can directly launch with accelerated aging data because it would take too long. So this would never be accepted by product management if they would need to wait 3 years or 5 years until we can launch the product.
Are you still doing real-time data?
You need to, for the authorities, you need to confirm it. At the end, as we are worldwide distributor, we have to register our products worldwide, and we need to have the real-time data available that we can provide it to the notified bodies and to the authorities.
Okay. So is there like an authority that is very keen on real life data, or is it like also varies across the globe?
I know that the Asian countries are sometimes very picky that they want to have it. But also I know when having a tooth audit, they want to see the data. It's not just, they will not just accept the packaging performance validation. They want to have the real data and the documentation, and they really understand it, and they dig in and want to get all the details.
As you said, like validating only like the shelf life is a huge task. And then you have to do tightness tests. You have to do probably also, as you mentioned, drop tests and all that stuff. So it seems like quite an intensive task to basically validate the packaging. How long does that take? Like if you want to develop a new packaging for this implant, how long would that take you? Like if you start today, like from a greenfield, like completely new packaging?
A complete new packaging. If you would make the decision, we develop a new implant packaging system, I would say 3 to 4 years.
3 to 4 years. Okay.
But this will also last for 20 years. So it's nothing that you develop just for 5 years. So I remember the IP that I've just seen, the patent will run out this year, next year. We introduced it 20 years ago and we still have it.
Okay. So the current packaging system that you're using was developed 20 years ago?
Around, yes.
Oh, okay. Good. And then like if you develop a new implant, you just take your packaging system and like mix and match from the existing packaging system that you basically have on the shelf. And then it's just a modular solution, so to say?
As long it fits in. The implants become longer and longer and longer, and the diameter will also change. So therefore, whenever possible, we try that it will fit in. But this is not forgiven, and in the worst case, you have a new worst case. So you always do a validation with the worst case. You try to consider what could be a worst case, but it's the length and the weight. And if you have a new worst case, if you have bad luck, you have to redo everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because the risk is higher. The risk for the sterile barrier is higher, and then you have to do a complete revalidation.
Okay. I mean, there's like the ever-changing, I would say, nature of the products that you're packaging. So you change the implant, it gets longer, it gets a different size, then your packaging system doesn't work anymore. Or you have other, let's say, additional regulatory requirements or requirements that come on top. And here comes to mind, of course, like all the sustainability requirements. Like now packaging, the direction is pretty clear that every packaging has to be recyclable. It goes into the direction of even for medical device that it has to be recyclable. They're also thinking about how could we recycle such contaminated waste. And this was a very, very important question to me to ask to you is how would you balance like these sustainability requirements and the requirements for the sterile barrier for, as we already discussed, these are huge and very complex requirements that you have, and you also have a quite complex system. How are you planning to balance that with the sustainability?
So at the moment, we are in this lucky position that we are exempt of the PPWR until 2034. So we have some time. But on the other side, we also have non-medical devices. Not everything is medical. So therefore, we already tackle the situation and try to understand and to think what can we already do. So that at 2030 that we have to react and then do everything in a rush. So what we have done, we have already created our golden rules. We call it the golden rules, how we want to develop our products and our packaging system. And here we have the PPWR in mind and already an idea how we want to do this. So whenever possible, for example, that we see, is there a monomaterial available, fit for purpose, fit for recycling, that we see, hey, don't do the packaging too big, try to make it a little bit smaller. These kind of rules, so that we already think in the future and to avoid that we have to redo again then in eight years. But at the moment, it's safety first, the patient safety first. So we have to be biocompatible. We have to keep the microbiological contamination in mind. And, we have to, the people will drill a hole in your body. There will be blood. There will be particles that could come into your body. And here we have to assure that we have a medical grade packaging, that it's virgin material, that it's not coming from a source we do not know. So therefore, it's a medical product, and we have to confirm that everything is safe.
Mm-hmm. And on top of that, probably also, it cannot cost unlimited amounts of money. I would add, of course, the patient outcome comes first, safety first, always in medical. Then secondary, we try to make it as good for the planet as possible, but then not at any cost. It should be as cheap as possible, still in medical.
Our CEO was just sharing a number, and we have learned that the spend for packaging material is higher than the spend for our implants, for the raw material. As you can imagine, that we already have a huge spend on packaging compared to what at the end we sell and what we are getting money for. We don't get money for the packaging, we get money for the product. And as our system is very complex, we have to spend a lot of money just for something that you throw away, that assures that the product is safe, but it will never end up in your body.
You're the packaging guy, and who am I to challenge you on that? But in my opinion, if you have such a complex system, the packaging is just an integral part of the product. And it is a delivery system that makes sure that a product requirement such as sterility and biocompatibility can be assured. So it's integral part of the product. But yeah, as you said, if you're spending more on the packaging, on the delivery system, than you spend on the actual thing that will remain in the body, that shows you how complex the system is. That really shows you that. So, maybe a little more on the golden rules you mentioned. Can you share them?
Okay. So we have defined 6 golden rules, and if you agree, I will quickly put my glasses on. So golden rule number 1 is that, let's say, monomaterial. So whenever possible, we would like to introduce monomaterial to increase also then the recycling rate of the packaging. This is, for example, number 1. We have also materials that you would like to avoid, as PVC or PVDC, these kind of materials which are already not banned, but where we already get questions when we apply to a tender where they are asking, is this in or is this out? So this is something. On the other side, this is then avoid dark pigment. So we have agreed, when we print a folding box, that we try to avoid that the whole box is printed in black, that we try, to increase the amount of light color. That also blister and the lid should be easily separated, that we do not have a sealing material which cannot be removed, that everything is full of glue and then you cannot recycle it. But also that the packaging is then easily detected in the recycling and sorting stream, that we don't have such a kind of packaging which is then not identifiable. And also, when possible, if there's a bio-based or biodegradable packaging, this kind of solutions, that we also want to dig in and better understand if there's something around, and not just take everything for granted and to say, okay, we have it now since 20 years, that we also dig in and try to understand if there would be an advantage or not.
Okay, cool. So thank you very much for sharing those. Those are very good examples of heuristics that you can apply to your products or packaging in order to make them better recyclable and better for sustainability. So you mentioned the PPWR will have an exemption for medical device. How would that impact you if that exemption would go in 2034?
So from our side, we have to do our homework and also to see what we can improve in regard of recyclability. I could imagine that the material that stays in the biohazard is a little bit different, but we have to have a look of everything which stays around or outside the sterile area, the blister, the sealing foil, the folding box. So for example, imagine if you have a folding box which is made of cardboard and then you put a PET label on it. This is not very sustainable. So these are, I would say, low-hanging fruits where you can say, okay, instead of a PET label, you put a paper label on it. Or these kind of things which are easily to change, or that we think about direct printing on a box. So these are projects that we currently have in mind, that we are currently working on. Or also in the primary packaging, we have a knob which is colored, which is currently has a label on. Here we remove the label and do laser engraving. Such things that we can already prepare. On the other side, we see, hey, what material is around. So I know that one of our companies that belongs to the group, they are using APET for their sterile barrier. It's accepted. It's not the premium segment, but it's accepted. Say, why not test this material, see if this would also fit for our products? These are activities we have already started and that we are working on.
Okay. So you're looking into also alternative materials. May they be from, let's say, virgin sources, but they're better recyclable. And then have you looked into if you would really want to go into retrieving those contaminated packaging waste that, for example, is the COC and all that stuff? Because there are take-back systems for single-use medical devices such as endoscopes, such as staplers and stuff like that. And this stuff is also very heavily contaminated. I doubt that your COC packaging is as contaminated as a stapler that was inside a patient with a lot of blood and other bodily fluids. So are you thinking about stuff like that?
I made my thoughts, but you could imagine that it will not be that easy to collect it worldwide and then to ship it. Somewhere you have to then to collect everything and to make something out of it. And then at the end, if you ship empty vials from the US or from China back to Switzerland to rework it, I'm not sure if this will be sustainable. So therefore, my goal is more, to avoid that also in our process that we can avoid. And know that you wanted to talk about it later, but the toothbrush, for example, I got the information that every year we incinerate around 30 tons of high quality PETG material. And if we can avoid this waste, I think it's already a good way to improve the situation. Just, it's avoidance. And that's just one step before of collecting the stuff. But you could imagine, we have many dental technicians also here in Switzerland, which are using a lot of blister material. You could imagine that collecting the waste here in Switzerland could be easier than collecting the waste all around the world. If we could set up a system, for example, as Nespresso has, collecting the material, sending it back, and then we try to bring it back, it could be a solution.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned a bunch of stuff that I really, really love. So number one is avoidance. There are the R principles. So of course, the first R principle is to refuse with an R, basically avoid the waste in the first place. So think about how could we not have this waste. For example, if you're revamping your whole delivery packaging system, how can we make it simpler? How can we make it better? How can we make it leaner? And that is, I think, the biggest lever that you have, not only on your environmental footprint, but also on the spending that you have. So to make it simpler, better, easier to use, there is a big lever that you have there. Then the second thing you mentioned is the reverse logistics. And this is something that we saw too. Yes, for example, think about the dental clinic and then think about how much space they have. And then if every dental medical device manufacturer has their own little collection system, that doesn't work. It's I call it the 27 bin problem. I came up with it myself because if you have 27 bins in a clinic, that just doesn't work. Nobody knows where to throw what. And usually they don't have enough time. So I don't know about dental clinics, but I know about hospitals. They usually are very short on staff And educating staff is also difficult, meaning that you have to have a very, very simple reverse logistic system. And then here, I think we should emphasize collaboration, and not only like collaboration with the clinics, but also with, as much as people don't like that, with their competition. Because like there needs to be a system, at least on a national level, where you can collect such waste and get it sorted in a way that it also does better and not worse. Because I think incineration of a very, very high quality plastic waste, such as the PETG that you mentioned, it just doesn't make sense. Like if it's good enough to make Coke bottles out of a very, very similar material for up to 10 times, I think it's quite reasonable to assume that PET blisters can also be recycled too. Maybe some comments from your side on what I just said, and then we're going to go to your toothbrush.
Hey, fully agree, and especially here in Switzerland, I have the feeling that we do not have a real lobby supporting us on this, how to proceed. So any initiative. So I remember we once wanted to start an initiative with the Fachhochschule in Windisch in regard of this, but it has not been accepted as a project. So what we do it then more intrinsically, that we also try to get in contact with competitors, maybe also not competitors, but having the same issues, to see how to tackle this situation. But I have learned it's not that easy to come together and to find a common solution. So every company is doing something for itself, but there's no common push that you do it together and that you try to solve the problem together. And here, I think we also need to have support from everywhere.
Yeah, I think you just recently joined the Swiss MedTech Sustainability Expert Group, and I'm a member of it for a year now. And there is initiative there to like bring people from at least the Swiss medical device perspective together, and to set up a system that can jointly address this. Because I think it needs to be like on a national level. Because if like someone tries to do the recycling on their own and they try to incorporate others, you get this like conflict of interest. So like, these are my competitors. Why should I give my system away? And then on the other hand, why should one company run the recycling system for like a whole nation? It needs to be like every stakeholder needs to be incorporated, and everybody has like their own interests, and that's why it's so difficult, and it's difficult to align. Because if you have a big medical device company, they tend to be slow. But like multiple big medical device companies coming together, that's like slow squared. And that's a little the issue here. It takes a lot of time. You need to negotiate a lot of interests, but I think eventually it's getting together. And in my opinion, better to do it like on an intrinsic motivation basis than to get a regulation that forces you to do it. Because then, to be a little mean, bureaucrats will just design a system and then it's going to be prescribed to you instead of like the market deciding on which is the best system. Okay. So tell us about your toothbrush project.
Years ago, I got the information that we have to scrap tons of very high quality material, and this really made me thinking. And based on this, I have started 2 bachelor theses. One was working on what to improve, how to avoid, and the other one was what can we do out of this material. So I contacted the Fachhochschule in Windisch, and we were thinking about projects, and one of them was just, to see what can we do out of the material. So we did testing in injection molding, in thermoforming, testing if we can do another sheet that we can do thermoforming again. So we did several testing, but at the end we came with a shoehorn and very simple things, and we completed the bachelor thesis. And then at the end I had, I would say 3 kilos of granules, and they were just landing on my desk, and I was thinking, what can I do out of it? Then I got the idea, why not get in contact with Trisa? So I was very brave and was sending them an email and asking them if they would be interested in such a project, and they really said yes, let's try it. We then came together with the Fachhochschule, we did some brainstorming, we did testing, and at the end we decided, okay, let's try it, let's give it a chance. Our production site in Villeret has collected around 1,000 kilos of blister sheets. They have been then reworked in a recycling center. regranulated, and these granules have been provided to Trisa. They did some trials, and at the end, they provided a toothbrush. So out of 1,000 kilo waste, we could produce around 50,000 toothbrushes in a very good quality. So the toothbrushes have passed all the ISO tests, so they can be used as a toothbrush. But we have also learned, that PETG is kind of a brittle. So if you bend it like hell, it will break. It has not the same quality as a material which is really dedicated for a toothbrush. But the quality is very good. As it is blue tinted, it's very shiny, looks very nice. We have a very nice design. We have then that also the brushes are sustainable, and the packaging around is sustainable. It's a nice sustainability story. And then at the end, these 50,000 toothbrushes ended somewhere in a warehouse. And what do we now do with it? And we started to distribute it at meetings, at conferences. And now we had the IDS this year, so they have distributed the toothbrush everywhere. So I got very good feedback. But it was also then a one-time thing, because the effort is quite high on our side to collect everything. But I like it very much, and I already have my next project in mind that I'm currently working on. So yeah.
So the challenge then was basically with the toothbrush to get it, let's say, serialized or industrialized. So that project, is it still like on we may do this again, or will it not be done again?
It will not be done again. So we still have enough on stock, but this is not our core business, and the effort, it's too high. But it was, for me, a very good learning. I have never done a toothbrush before. And in our company, we have this, we call it player-learner mindset. So we try to learn, try to grow, and to experience new things. And I really want to see how far I can go until I get a slap. But I never got a slap. I always got it. I have already been motivated also by the CFO, and I'm now 16 years with the company, so I know who to have in the boat and who needs to have such a toothbrush that I get the green light. Went up to the CEO, and yeah, now we have it, and I'm really proud of it. And the next is then furniture. So I'm already working on furniture, tables, chairs made of waste.
Yeah, I think if you don't play, you don't learn. And I think it was also like Christoph Jung, like the famous psychologist, who said it's like the precursor of the savior is always the fool. So if you're not willing to basically make yourself a fool because you don't understand and you start to play and you have, let's say, kids' eyes, you will never learn and you will never achieve something. So it's a very, very good trick. Start playing and think about something that this could be applied to. So let's come a little bit to the personal part. What motivates you to do packaging for medical device and to make them sustainable, even if it's an implant packaging?
I do not have a technical background. So I have a commercial background, and it was not an accident, but it was not really planned that I will end up in the packaging industry. But as we are surrounded by packaging everywhere, and for me, it's still the worst thing when I open a packaging with meat and I'm not able to open it properly. It really hurts me. And for me, packaging is something which is very close to my heart, because it's, as I said, it's everywhere. I still have this curiosity to open and to experience a packaging with the kid's eye. I never follow the sign on the packaging. I always try to try it with intuition. Can I find out without reading how to open the packaging? For me, this is a kind of an exercise I always like to do. I also like aesthetics. So I like when something is nicely done, when something looks nice. So this packaging is something which is very, as I said, close to my heart. But also on the other side, I have two girls, 8 and 5, and I see their future. And I think packaging is something, when we can do it better, when we can do it sustainable, this will also something that they can benefit of and their kids could benefit of. I want to create an impact, and to make it better, not only for me, but for all of us. And with packaging, we have a big chance to have an impact and also on the customer side. So the packaging is the thing that they see before they see the product. So that's the first thing they have in their hands. And if you can just improve this, I think you create an impact.
Yes. I mean, that very much aligns with what I do, because like my motto is form a better world with plastic. Because I really think that plastic is a material that has a bad reputation, but doesn't deserve it. Because plastic can do a lot of good. It's just how you use it and how you design it and how you treat it at the end of life. And I mean, if we can really enable to make it be treated at the end of life, first of all, we try to avoid it as much as possible, not only because of the environment, but also because of the cost and things that don't need to be there. And secondly, when we made it as good as possible, then we can also treat it at the end of life and recycle it and use it again, because it may not be good enough. I think I have the vision that like at one point we will have a circular economy, that we can use the plastic that was used in MedTech and be used in MedTech again. I think that's really possible. It's like we have a lot of technical challenges until there, but I think that is possible. But until then, we can still go ahead and take the plastic that was in the medical space and use it for something else. As you said, chairs, toothbrushes, stuff like that. Because I always draw this analogy, like the Coke bottle. Coke is a drink with quite the acidity in there. It's not a pleasant chemical for your teeth, actually. And you guys like that because you can then sell a bunch of implants for the teeth. But if you can store such a chemical mixture in a PET bottle for quite some time, I think it's a few months that you can store the Coke in there, and you can do that with recycling plastics, you probably can do a lot more than we're currently doing in MedTech. Because in MedTech currently we have this like change avoidance and we have this, let's say, novelty avoidance mechanism. And I think we need to get innovative with our packaging, because innovation and sustainability will go very nicely together. Good. So to the last question, what advice would you like to give? Because that was my advice that I would like to give. What advice would you like to give to our listeners in regards of packaging of implants?
You know, when we think about the PPWR, and if you have the 2034 in mind, just postpone it. Yesterday I had a talk with someone also doing medical packaging, and what they did, they just were writing a rationale why they're exempt until 2034. So they have the feeling, hey, we are safe, we don't have to do anything. And they got the question, hey, why do you already do something? And for me, I don't want to wait until it's too late. The things are changing so fast. Could be, you know, today it's 2034. In a few years, it's just 2030 or 2032. And then you're just at the point where it's too late. So don't wait. Whenever change, already try to improve the situation and don't wait to the latest time point. So whatever you can change now, do it now and don't postpone it. That's why I'm really pushing my team to already think about of improving, changing, and not only wait for the PPWR, also try to create an impact somewhere else. It's be it for plastic, be it for cardboard, whatever. Try to do it. And if you do it with your heart intrinsically, then you will do it good. But you need to have this inner motivation. And if you have it, from outside, the CEO or the board is not guiding me. I do not have any guidance from the board, from the CEO, what I have to do. We just do it because we want to do it. And I think here we can really create an impact.
I think I couldn't agree more. So what I would like to add is, like, if you have this mentality, we're just doing it because it's the right thing. Because sustainability is for many people, it just means ecology. It just means better for the environment. But the real sustainability is the triple bottom line. Good for the patient, good for the planet, and good for profit. And if you have it like this, like all three pillars, it's a very good long-term strategy. And don't kid yourself. In Europe, it's going to be compliance. It's maybe a little bit postponed, but in the end, we have the ESPR and medical devices are in scope. So at some point, I think the MDR is going to get an update And just every eco-design principle or eco-design requirement is going to be just directly written into the MDR. And then you have to do it anyways. And the rush and the panic that will break out amongst medical device companies when that is the case, that will be glorious, because like some people and some companies will have a head start because they have people like you, because they said, yeah, we're going to do it because it's the right thing and because we think it's a good long-term strategy. And like, I think in 20 years, you're going to be very, very happy that you did it today. So Marcel, do you have any last words?
No. Really looking forward to the workshop that we are having in December to learn more about plastics, polymer, to get new ideas, new insights. So I'm really looking forward to see you here, having a one-day workshop with you, and curious to learn.
Okay, thank you very much. This was Marcel Kunz, Head of Packaging from Straumann Group. And until the next time.